Hello there. Today we're up here on Ridgeland Tower because today's shrines are Tawajin and Kito Wawai. If you happen to know the locations of those shrines off the top of your head, you might be a little confused right now because they're located nowhere near Ridgeland Tower. The intended solution of both of these shrines are the same. You have to defeat some Hinoxes, save the Jerrys around their necks, and return them to their homes. You can also just sneak up and steal the Jerrys, I guess. But considering the three brothers get stronger as you go, you're definitely meant to bring them down. And because the entire concept is Jerry on platform equals shrine, I can't do much to avoid it. So, I hear you, Nintendo. You want me to defeat these three Hinox, right? So the only sane and logical conclusion I could come to in order to solve this ridiculously would be to instead defeat every single Hinox on the map without touching the ground. In Hyrule, there are a total of 30 Hinox, 40 if you include Stalnox, which I'm not. They dead already. And I'm gonna take this one step further, which brings us to why we're here on Ridgeland Tower. Many of you know this is the home of Bron Lee, the Birdman minigame guy. A minigame where if you touch the ground, it ends and yanks you back to the tower. So I am going to leave this tower, bring down all 30 Hinoxes all in one trip. We also named every Hinox when I did this on stream, so that's where all of these weird names are coming from. So it's time to channel our inner Levi and bring down these titans. The first Hinox is to the northeast near Hyrule Castle. I will be speeding up and slowing down the footage as wind bombing for 10 plus minutes without a Hinox can get pretty boring, but we'll have plenty to talk about along the way. The first Hinox here is named Porkchop, and he met his end far more than any other Hinox during this because no matter where I failed, he's always first in line. The next Hinox is going to be to the north, but because we have to come so close to the ground after every Hinox, in order to travel, we have to wind bomb back up after almost every single Hinox. Some, like Porkchop, have a cliff nearby to fall back to in order to have extra opportunities to gain height, mostly to have spots to recover from if I fail a wind bomb. The second Hinox, who is up here in the middle of Pea Soup Rainland, is named Applebee's. And this is the perfect opportunity to talk to you about the sponsor of today's video, no one, especially not Applebee's. Before getting distracted by this dining establishment lost in a storm, I was talking about failing wind bombs. Every Hinox gets a total of 2 opportunities to wind bomb away. Some have slightly more if they're near a cliff, like Porkchop back there. If I fail twice, it's pretty much over. At Applebee's, I went west instead of north. This is because the drafts by the mountain actually push bombs and can completely ruin wind bombs. Next on the hit list is Blind Bob. When routing this out, I aimed to ensure that this was near the beginning no matter what. This Hinox is shrouded in complete darkness. The 2 torches there I used as visual cues, drifting down and watching for a flash of orange to appear. That light is Jerry, showing us exactly where to aim. Afterwards, wind bomb back west instead of east because the east side of this forest, the mountains start back sooner than on the west, so it's just much safer to go west. It's a bit of a journey to the 4th Hinox, so let's talk about altitude for a bit. When planning this out, I actually loaded up the emulator and went to every single Hinox using a memory editor to see Link's Y coordinate. The next Hinox is only 64 units higher than Blind Bob, and some fun facts. Link falls at 4 units per second with a paraglider out, and with a really good vertical wind bomb, you can gain upwards of around 60 units of height. Maybe a little bit more if it was purely vertical, but that's pretty rare on this trip. On average, it'll be closer to 30 to 40 units of height gained. So, over the course of 10 seconds, Link loses all of the height gained from a wind bomb. That lecture brings us to Shrek's Swamp. This definitely probably isn't a swamp. Even though I can one-shot every single one of these Hinox, Shrek here lived once. So, for safety, we double tap. After Shrek is Fiona, 160 units below Shrek. A nice chill fall, followed by a very long distance, a 140 unit climb, which amounts to immensely more than just 140 units because of how much is lost over that distance. Now, number 6 is unfortunately named, and I'm sorry, Sexy Sonic. Because I sometimes get distracted and say something completely out of context, and it spurs up into weird things. Why Sonic gotta be so sexy? Don't use that out of context. Though as you can see, Sonic is surrounded by mountains. So in order to successfully wind bomb, I had to go past him in order to set up for when the next wind bomb would be, and I needed to go straight east. So I took out Sonic, slid down a little bit south, and then bombed myself east. The trip to Sonic at first was an absolute nightmare before I optimized my aerial wind bombing method, which we're going to talk about later when I have a little bit more time between Hinoxes. Also, in earlier attempts, I actually went east here and then went straight south, but found it more optimal to go up and around Zora's domain later on. And this brings us down to the first gauntlet of Hinoxes. Number 7 here is called 33 Hard, because it was named based on the song that was playing at the time, which is the 33rd track on the OST of Super Mario RPG, called Hard. I've used it in a lot of videos, and it's what's playing right now. Now, number 8. Where this guy is located, if it's raining, it is enveloped in a thick fog that my bad eyes just cannot see through. And at this point, it's over 25 minutes since I've started. I'm tired, and he kept ending me. So, to at least have a small chance that it wasn't raining, I finally went and did Varuda on this file. And if it is raining when I get here, the way I mapped it out, I would have a second opportunity to come back in about 10 minutes after I've taken care of all of the other Hinox in this gauntlet. But this is Dan. We really don't like Dan. But after that whole thing, we continue north up to Kakariko. There is another flat ground Hinox. There is a cliff nearby, but it's dangerously far away. And Breadsticks here didn't claim more than one attempt, and that failure is 100% on me. I really shouldn't have gone north. And what good are breadsticks without some sauce to go with it? Doesn't matter what sauce. This is sauce. And sauce here is one of the few Hinox that has no recovery wind bomb. It's tucked into the mountain in a craterous location. A failed wind bomb here lands on this hill. But I don't think Sauce ever failed me. You're a good guy, Sauce. Around the mountain after Sauce is Salty Milk Drinker. If you've never had a tall, thick glass of salty milk, you don't know what you're missing out on. And honestly, that's probably a good thing. Up next is Carl. Carl here likes to hang out in a spot that is very easy to access that I struggled extremely hard with, and I have no one to blame but myself. Over to the east of Carl, and the end of the gauntlet, is Stale Fruit Loops. Fun fact, in the beginning, Stale Fruit Loops was actually number 7 after Sonic. Until Dan reared his stupid head. Sorry, lost my cool for a second there. If your name is Dan, don't worry. Odds are you're not the Dan in question, because Dan is a Hinox. A very, very dead Hinox. After Fruit Loops, we've got a long way to the next Hinox, and this is probably one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever done. I first started making content by wind bombing to ridiculous places, like Ganon, Flower Blight, inside of Death Mountain. Eventide was the first really big one. And the biggest was probably making an X from corner to corner across the entire map. All during the Birdman minigame, obviously. Me and Bron Lee go way back. But every one of those has the advantage of I can just wind bomb super high and never come down until the end. So, other than running out of stamina food, I was really never in danger during those. But here, I have to come dangerously close to the ground over 30 times. Entering bullet time also drains stamina, and if I don't notice that I ran out, it's all over. This is definitely one of the most stressful adventures I've ever been on. Down in the bog here, surrounded by flat ground, is Oog. Not Shrek. Shrek would have made sense, but nope, it's Oog. The next logical step after Oog is Olive Garden. Because of the flame war going on between Applebee's and Olive Garden that happened for some reason, it was named Olive Garden. We get to be kind of normal after we leave Olive Garden though, which definitely ended at least one attempt and is enough for me to never go back there again. This here is Fergus, and Fergus almost had a friend try to shoot me out of the sky, which would have made this 30 Hinox and a Guardian. We've got another minute before we reach our next victim, and I wanted to take a moment to say thank you. I was originally planning to do a milestone video after hitting 10k subs, which as of this recording is closer to 15k, but I'm always really awkward in those, as you can tell by this. I'm glad every one of you enjoy watching me break Hyrule into pieces. I've always done ridiculous things like this on my own, and really enjoy breaking video games. It's probably a huge factor as to why I became a quality engineer. So, if you enjoy this and want to see more, subscribe. It's literally just how the system works. And I'm going to continue doing these ridiculous things as long as you guys are entertained. Well, now that sapfest is over, we've got another worrisome Hinox. Homer here is down inside of a canyon, so not a lot of time to recover if I mess up. And after Homer, the next Hinox is named 2022 film The Batman or Utah IDFK. I took the names as stated, and that's how it was stated. I was a little concerned because the jungle there is really laggy and likes to mess up wind bombs, which is why I stayed really far back to try and avoid it. After the Batman and after flying for well over an hour at this point, we finally come to the Hinoxes that made this whole nightmare happen. Ed, Ed, and Eddie. As to which one is which, you can decide. All three of these are on flattish ground. The worst one is actually in the middle. Because he's at the bottom of a small canyon. Is it a canyon? I'm not a geographer. Is that the right profession? Point is, I fail a wind bomb here, it's gonna lead to widespread panic across the entire nation. And the last brother is nothing special. Don't worry, Jerry's. I will come back for you. Hinox number 22 is probably my favorite. It's also one of the two that I was most worried about, the other being Blind Bob. Balboa here is inside of a cave, and it doesn't spawn until I'm basically inside of the hole above the cave. I don't know entirely what happened here, but it looks like all 10 arrows from this bow hit something around his neck, and he took no damage. And this is why we double tap. Across the sea is a little lonely island known as Eventide. You might have guessed that this particular Hinox is at the lowest altitude of all the Hinox, but only by 0.2. The other one's actually at the middle of the map, and I triple checked because I was really surprised. I thought Andy here on Eventide was for sure the lowest by a large margin. Being the lowest Hinox, obviously there is very little room for recovery. Now, I spent a really long time planning this route out. The biggest factors when planning were Typhlo Ruins being first, obviously, optimizing going down in elevation as much as possible, and avoiding the low ground by the sea. Because of the drafts coming in from the sea, I'm sure somebody knows what they're actually called and would be happy to comment it, they ruin wind bombs. Number 13 and 23 were originally back-to-back at one point, but Mount Lanayru just broke wind bombing because I had to be so close to the ground because of stale Fruit Loops. Number 24 here. He was almost named Also Dan after I failed to regain height. As he sits on the edge of the jungle, it's already pretty dangerous because of the lag, and I've been in the air for almost an hour and a half at this point. So when I failed, I was obviously really upset, but he redeemed himself and was instead named Anything But Jungle, Please. Now we've got like a third of Hyrule to cross before we reach the next few, so I would like to break down my wind bombing method so you too can fly around destroying everything in your path. BLSS is a thing, but we can't fight while we do that. While flying forwards, reset your momentum by either entering bullet time or closing and opening the paraglider. Move forward until at max speed, usually takes about 3 seconds. Buffer 5 times. By that, I mean open and close the rune selection 5 times. On the 6th buffer, drop the circle bomb and begin buffering again. 3 times is usually enough, or until the ring from the bomb is just off screen. Then release the rune selection and immediately enter bullet time. And enter the rune selection. Switch to the square bomb and drop it, switch back and blow up the first bomb. This method of buffering plus visual cues makes the process a lot more reliable and consistent. It all just takes practice. But this gets the round bomb almost in the perfect spot every single time. This can also be done from the side for additional visual cues. Wind bombs work because they slap Link in the face really hard in bullet time, which during calculations are multiplied. And the force is enough to allow Link to escape from the second bomb's explosion. There's a reason why these were called Boomy Zoomies. 25 here, I actually went back in the air and hung out until the rain stopped because I could not see Sleepy Dog here. And I wasn't going to risk it at this point. over the river and over the mountain and over the woods, we're not going through anything, is ARG! This is the only emotion one can be feeling after taking down 26 Hinoxes. Now, numbered 27 through 29, these next 3 Hinoxes are named because of the word Hinox. You might think I'm pronouncing the word weird, because Hinox can be properly pronounced 3 different ways. Hinox, Hinox, which is how I say it, and Walter White.
I am the one who knocks.
There was a Reddit poll at one point of how to pronounce it, and how is it that close? I even consulted someone I know with an English degree. They stated that because it's a made-up word, Hinox and Hinox are both correct. And because it comes from the Japanese word, Google Translate, say it for me.
Hinox.
Hinox is the most correct out of the 3. So in short, all 3 are fine. At this point, he's the only Hinox left, and has been named Harry Nilsson, because 1 is the loneliest number. And that is the end of the Hinox line. Now, throughout this whole thing, you might have had a couple questions, which I'm gonna address real quick. First, where are you gonna end? And that's easy. We're going full circle and landing back with Bron Lee. He's gotta be impressed with everything I've done here. Oh, and quick fun fact about the Birdman minigame, it does not measure distance traveled. Obviously, it measures point to point, or as the crow flies. And because of this, the number has been going up and down this entire time, and will now just go all the way back down to 0 as we reapproach Bron Lee. The other question you may have is, how am I one-shotting Hinox? And that's because of my Bow of Light, which you're probably also asking, how do you have the Bow of Light? Well, there are a couple different ways to keep it. There's memory storage, which is the old method, and inventory slot transfer, which is the newer method. Now, the Bow of Light only does 100 damage, but through a glitch called weapon modifier corruption, it's possible to obtain a 10-shot Bow of Light that deals 180 plus damage. Mine does 181 because I didn't go through the extra steps to do the 220 damage one. El Duende 05 has some pretty good videos on both weapon modifier corruption and specifically one for obtaining the Bow of Light with inventory slot transfer. I'll leave a link to those videos down in the description for those who are interested. Bron Lee, I have flown across all of Hyrule and rid the world of the Titan menace. Are you impressed? I'm sorry, what? Man, I'm never wind bombing again. Obviously, I had to go back and save the Jerrys. They were on the ground waiting for us to return. Kito Wawai being the final shrine and Jerry's final appearance. Jerry, you have made this entire series an absolute blast. We have done so much together. As you are Sheikah technology, I don't expect to see you again in Tears of the Kingdom. But perhaps we'll see a relative of yours instead. Farewell, Jerry. Farewell. And this means that only a single shrine remains.